Anybody who's watched the Circuitry and Beyond video, this might look somewhat familiar, even though I have the codon wheel as well. The Circuitry and Beyond video is really important in understanding this leftness and rightness, and what this leftness and rightness is all about. How it's about particles, separateness, duality, the this and the that, right? That's what Libra and the spleen is all about. All these gates over here, Libra and the spleen, that's what this is all about. Particles, separateness, the this and the that, weighing things, equilibrium. Equilibrium. What is the source gate of the spleen, the 50th hexagram? What is its Siddhi? Harmony. Its gift is equilibrium. Its shadow is corruption, like corrupt government, corrupt information, corrupted files on a computer. Yeah, that can exist. And this side, right? Leftness. That's why it's on the left. It's like leftness. The this and the that, contrast. Rightness is a completely different animal. Rightness is all these gates in Pisces. It's about no thing in particular. It's the great sea. It's waves, right? We have particles and we have waves. I don't know why Crowley knew to do this back in the 30s, but he did. Particles and waves, okay. He was no slouch, and he wasn't evil like some people think he is. He was just, he had too much fun jerking people's chains in print. Sort of like flame wars, the way we have flame wars these days on the internet, people just throwing shit at each other. They would do that in England, in London, you know, except they would use newspaper columns instead of blogs and YouTube videos. Crowley would take the piss out of people. People would take the piss out of Crowley. But, you know, the way Crowley took the piss was a little too, bit too much for some people. But it's kind of a trick, because when you go and read his work, you realize that there is no way in hell a psychopath can write poetry like this. Psychopaths are not creative in this way. Psychopaths cannot be creative in this way. They cannot write poetry like this, and they are not even interested in these subjects in this way. Not really. Not really. And when you get to the core of it, it's all about service to humanity. Period. Service to humanity. So, moving into rightness, it's like no thing in particular. No thing in particular. It's the waves, it's not the particles, which means there's like high probability, there's a possibility of things happening. There's a high probability of maybe some things happening more than other things, but it doesn't mean you can't change your reality. We see a lot of people talking about this stuff, parallel realities and all that kind of thing. It's very much connected to dream states. It's connected to processing things, many things at once, not one thing at a time like leftness. Not one thing at a time. Many things all at once. And between leftness and rightness, like I talked about last time, we have like the central column of individual gates. The central column of individual gates is a really big deal when we start looking at this whole schemata here. Of course, we have individual channels that are in leftness and rightness as well, right? Like the 5720, the 2838, the 3955, and the 2212. You know, these individual channels that kind of go around the center. They sort of add a mutative quality to both leftness and rightness. It's what binds them together in a way. It pulls them in. That's what the sort of the G center and these individual channels do. They kind of pull everything in and holds it together. Like with the centering circuit of the 3410 and the 2551, right? But the area we want to look at is right here, this crucial area. We're not looking at the head or the root. We're just looking at this area. And we're not even really looking at leftness and rightness. So that's a way to think about it. We're not looking at the edges of the body graph with the head and the root, the two pressure centers, or leftness and rightness with the spleen and the solar plexus. We're not looking at that. We're looking at this area, the ajna, throat, G center, heart, and sacral. The heart center actually is kind of an interesting thing. It's not going to factor in so much into this right now. And I think the reason that is because when we look at these channels, these channels right here, the heart center is more tribal inherently. That's what these three channels are coming out of it, the 2145, the 2644, and the 4037. So the heart center isn't really structured in this kind of way of just fundamentally supporting individual direction. It's a little different. The heart's a little bit different of a center. And people might remember me posting this and saying that this card called the Aeon card, it used to be called the Judgment card in the Rider-Waite deck and other decks. And it would show a picture of like the Archangel Raphael in the background blowing a trumpet with a red cross. Now that red cross is interesting because it's about spiritualizing the cross, the red cross. What do we see the red cross do? Like even in the world, what does the red cross do? They go to places that have been experienced earthquakes or hurricanes or some kind of disaster, and they help resurrect people, so to speak, pulling them out from the rubble, saving people. Okay, the red cross. So we see the Archangel Raphael, angel of healing, blowing a trumpet with a red cross hanging off of it. And we see three individuals rising out of graves, a man on the left, a woman on the right, and a child in the middle. Think about that. A man on the left, a woman on the right, and a child in the middle. Now, what Crowley did with his revelation that came to him is he put a lot of Egyptian symbolism into this. Like this is Mayat. Mayat is basically Lady Justice for the Egyptians, okay? And here we have Anubis, we have Khafra, just a lot of Egyptian symbolism in the Thoth deck. And in here we have Nuit, right? The expanse, the night sky, the feminine. But we also have Hadit, which is basically symbolized by this, it sort of looks like a symbol of Libra, doesn't it? You know, it's kind of like an egg. It almost looks like an egg, right? And this is kind of like a symbol of masculine and feminine. We have Hadit, the winged globe. Like you could think of this as pointedness that's flying through the heavens, right? Pointedness that's flying through the heavens. And this balance of masculine and feminine is a really powerful thing. It's giving birth to new realities all the time. All the time, every microsecond, every billionth of a second, there's a new reality, new reality, new reality, right? Because there's a perfect blending of what we could call leftness and rightness here. That's what this reality is. It's all happening right now, and right now, and right now. What we're moving out of, evolving out of, is like being really fixed over here, you know, and trying to find identity strictly in this area. It has its place. There's nothing wrong with it. It's how we get science. It's how we find so many amazing things. It's even where desire comes from. Because when you have experiences in contrast, you get to see what you like and what you don't like, what you would prefer and what you would not prefer. Why? Because you're separating experiences. Separating experiences. I like this. I don't like that. I would rather eat this for breakfast. I don't like that. There's all these options, all the this and the that, all the this and the that. But we have a spiritual reality as well that's very peripheral, that isn't as focused, but it doesn't mean it's inactive, and it does not mean it's passive either. In a lot of ways, it's even more active. In a lot of ways, this reality supports this one very much through synchronicity, through lots of things, actually. This is a picture of Horus the child. Horus the child. And Horus is also called the Lord of Silence. As you can see, he's holding his lips. Why is Horus called the Lord of Silence? It's a funny thing about manifestation. It's a funny thing about, you've heard that saying, those who know don't say, and those who say don't know. You've heard that. Some of you probably have. I've thought about that before, and I thought like, wow, I share so much. Does that mean I don't know anything? I don't know what I'm talking about. In some cases, yeah. Some cases, it's true. But there's something about it. There's something about that silence and how it's connected to individual circuitry and how it's connected to the G center in a way. Individual circuitry and how it brings mutation into the world. This is all about mutation. Mutation really comes through new generations, new generation. The next one, the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one. It's always a little bit of an upgrade, even if the whole world seems like it's in retrograde, even if everything seems like it's backwards and nothing is getting any better, it's still getting better, at least somewhat, with every new generation. Something mutated, something changed, something mutated, something changed. But now we're in like a big mutation with the whole collective, right? It's not just individuals, even though the individuals is mainly where the mutation is coming through. But there's some kind of collective mutation taking place as well with the left and the right, the masculine and the feminine, okay? And Raphael is getting ready to blow his trumpet of healing, of resurrection. That's what this is about. It's basically the same message, but being shown in a different way, okay? When we look at the Siddhis of all the individual gates, from top to bottom, they are sanctity, silence, epiphany, quintessence, exquisiteness, beauty, union, universal love, awakening, bounteousness, innocence, justice, honor, immortality, clarity, majesty, being, presence, purity, grace, freedom, and liberation. Now, freedom and liberation are the big ones. But what do all these have in common, you know? What do all these have in common? There's something about them. There's something about them that's like ineffable in a way. Even like when you look at the gift of the 24, what is it? Silence. Silence. What do we see, you know, the Lord of Silence doing? Holding his mouth, you know, shh, quiet. There's something about that. Now, some people interpret it in different ways, and you see a lot of motifs of this in Egyptian hieroglyphs. Holding the finger to the lips. There's something about it. And when we look at leftness and rightness, okay, again, you could think of sun and moon, the seen and the unseen, the known and the unknown, and how they work together, how they work together. And we have the chicken and the egg conundrum. Which came first? Is it what I saw that came first? Or did the unknown come first? Right? When you read about Horus, you read about these two eyes of Horus. Horus's left eye, which is the sun, and Horus's right eye, which is the moon. This is too much of a coincidence to my mind, you know? It really is. All of this fitting together. Again, if you're feeling a little lost about all this, go back and watch my Circuitry and Beyond video, especially the section on individual circuitry. You can skip ahead to that section if you want, to where I get into some of this. But I'm taking it even deeper this time with you guys. Okay. Horus's left eye and Horus's right eye. The sun and the moon. Now, the sun is really represented by leftness. It really is. You know, some people might think the sun is represented by rightness with the solar plexus. But that's not, it's not really true. You know, there is a sun in the moon card. There is a kind of sun within the unknown, but it's the sun behind the sun, right? That's another way of thinking of the judgment card or the aeon card. The aeon card is the 20th card of the major arcana. The sun is the 19th, and the moon is the 18th. So right here we have 18, 19, 20. 18, 19, 20. Kaf, Resh, Shin. This is all very meaningful, you know. None of this is an accident. This is not just me pulling things out of thin air and trying to make it mean something. Not at all. I mean, even when we look at the sun card, this is very much connected to Libra. When you look at the symbol of Libra, what is it? It's a sun rising above a horizon. That's the actual symbol of Libra. Okay. It is an omega symbol with a line underneath it. It's what we see. It's the phenomenal universe. The phenomenal universe. And even on the card of Libra, being the Justice card, we see 19 spheres. Now, there are symbols and hidden symbols like this with number and things throughout the Thoth deck. There's a reason he put 19 spheres in that card. 19. I go back a little bit. There are 19 of these spheres, corresponding to the 19th card of the major arcana, being the sun card. Now, there's a lot of interconnectedness with all of this, but let's just keep moving forward. So it's ineffable, right? There's something about the mixture of the leftness and rightness which is ineffable. It's something that can't be labeled. Now, there's something about this that is like, it's sort of like rightness. You know, when I'm talking about rightness in the Circuitry and Beyond video, it is more connected to what we can't label, what's difficult to define, you know, the unknown. When we enter into the unknown, we don't know, right? That's the nature of it. It's the unknown. There's an ineffable nature to it, which means if you have experiences of spiritual kinds or all kinds of experiences where you're processing so much, a big part of it is that it's unable to be spoken of. But when we combine the left and the right, this is where we get mutation, and this is where we get things that actually may be able to be spoken of in a way. But it's about a new order of being. It's a new order of being in the world. That's what mutations bring. It's not about just measuring everything and being like, oh, if we build just a better rocket, if we build a better rocket, if we build the best government, if we could get the United Nations to finally do something good, then the world will be saved. No, that's not how it's going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. That's the only way it's going to happen. New generations coming in, but the generation gap is so wide these days. We've never experienced this before on this planet. We've never experienced the generation gap this insanely wide. You know, with this technological advancement, it's pretty crazy. And there is something coming, something you could say, but it's something while at the same time it's no thing. That's a good way to think about it. Thinking about this in terms of like a grand happening is missing the point. It's really missing the point of it. Crowley had an equation that he would often tell people about, write about, called 0 equals 2. 0 equals 2. It means that duality comes out of the no thing. No thing is the foundation of existence. The no thing is the foundation of all existence. Duality comes out of that. Separateness comes out of that. Okay, the world that we see is not a first cause. Like I wrote about, like when I quoted that Letters from 500 quote from the third book, Amen, when it talked about what does meaning mean, you know, well, the phenomenal world that you see itself cannot be a first cause. That would be saying like the color red came from the color red. It didn't. It came from a spectrum of colors, and then from that, before that, it was, you know, from the splitting of pure white light. That's where red came from. It came from something other than itself that it cannot, in a way, know. It can't know it. And it's no different with humanity. We are sparks of divine light, but we're not like just, how do I put this? I don't want to say it like, oh, we're not pure. That means we're dirty and fallen. No, we are all reflections of it. Absolutely. And we can enter into this state, and we're entering into it more and more often. But the thing is, it never manifests. This union of the no thing, it never really manifests. And people who want it to manifest actually manifest. They're really just craving oblivion. Really. This is a formula of existence. Okay. You don't just have one or the other. You have both of them working together. And it really is a key secret of manifestation. Manifestation. Think about that. Think about the throat center too. Manifestation. We always think about it going like this. We're going from the chicken into the egg. But it's actually more like a Mobius strip. We're not going in one direction anymore. It's feeding back in on itself. It's not just one edge. It's not just one side. I mean, it's not just going in one direction. It's there's one edge, and it goes both inside and outside. You know, this is kind of like a interesting model of the realities we're more and more moving into. Where time, linear time, this rooster thinks it's going somewhere. And the closer it gets to this somewhere, which is actually nowhere and no thing, it's starting to experience more and more synchronicity, more and more profound insight into itself, more and more insight into source. Epiphanies, all these siddhis, sanctity, silence, epiphany, quintessence, exquisiteness, beauty, union, universal love, awakening, bounteousness, innocence, etc., etc., etc. And the big ones being freedom and liberation. That's what the leftness is experiencing when it merges with rightness. All these individual siddhis. Okay? It's very, very mutative. And the way individual circuitry works is that there's nothing, there's nothing, there's nothing, then there's a spike. Then there's nothing, there's nothing, there's nothing, then there's a spike. This is how all individual channels work. It's how I experience it. It's how other people experience it. It's how you read about it when you read the gene keys. You know, you could read, say, for example, the quintessential, like, you know, the quintessence of the 43. That's funny. But really the quintessential individual gate would be the first hexagram. And that's all he talks about when he's talking about the first hexagram. There's nothing, there's nothing, there's nothing. Then there's a mutative spike. Then it comes back down into a place of seeming stagnation, seeming stasis, where nothing is happening. And people with the first hexagram in their incarnation cross, they can feel this very intensely sometimes as nothing is happening. Nothing is happening. My life was just so amazing, and all this creative energy was coming through me, and now it feels like there's just dead energy, dead. It's because there is a lot of integration taking place, and the universe itself needs to line up with you in order to get to a new mutation, a new spike. It just takes a while to get there. It can't just get there all at once. You can't just have an infinite spike. It doesn't work like that. But this goes for any individual gate, any individual channel throughout the whole body graph. They all kind of have this. There's nothing, there's nothing, there's nothing, then boom. In comes a mutation, which is about adaptation, adapting to the environment better, being able to survive better in one way or another, working with the universe in a way. Even when you look at evolution in nature, you're like, how the hell did this evolve like that? I can't even fathom that. How did that evolve like that? It's because of this paradox. There's something about it that is very fascinating. It's not just one direction. Like there's this bat in the jungle, and it evolved in a way to pollinate these flowers, because these flowers, it looks like a trumpet, right? And the bat has a really long tongue to get down to the bottom of these trumpet-looking flowers that are pointed upward. But the flower also has its pollen, its little sexual organ, the flower sexual organ, hanging on top of it, so that when the bat sticks its head in the trumpet, it rubs on the top of the bat's head while the bat is drinking. And then what happens? The bat goes to the next flower and pollinates that one from the flower that it just went to. So it's kind of like doing bees work, but it's a bat. But when you look at this situation, you're like, how the hell did that evolve like that? How did that just evolve like that? Like this bat really just over millions of years got a really long ass tongue. And this flower just picked this bat in particular, like, okay, I'm going to use you to propagate myself. But how did that even start? This is the paradox when we get into mutation and stuff like this, and adaptation, and what is the inside and the outside? Is there even such a thing as the inside and outside? Is there something we're going to? Which has primacy, the left or the right? Or do they work together in order to bring mutation and more experience for our soul? That's where I'm leaning toward. So what we're feeling is a big pressure, this pushing down, right, into a place of seeming stagnation where nothing is happening. And then there's going to be a spike. But there's lots of spikes. People experience lots of spikes all the time. Mutative spikes, interesting, creative stuff. You know, some people with individual circuitry, they experience quite a bit of the manic depressive stuff. As soon as they go up, boy, do they love it. They're like, whoa, 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 whoa. They love it, love it, love it, love it. Then when they come down, it's a hardcore depression. And this is what I was experiencing when he was on Ibiza, actually. He was in a really low place here. You know, he has so much individual circuitry, but it just wasn't coming out right. There was too much pressure here. It was like being forever pushed down, right? Just always pushed down. He wasn't experiencing enough of a mutative spike. It just wasn't happening. But then it did happen. It did happen. You could say that he had his own experience of this, literally. Right? You could say that. But there's more about this that's actually quite fascinating. I found this picture when I went to Peru for the first time to have an ayahuasca ceremony. And I was at a vegan restaurant in Cusco. And I went to the bathroom and I see this picture on the wall. And I said, oh my God, it is Ra playing a feather like it's a violin. You see that? This is Ra. And I looked up this picture. I put it in Google Images and I tried to find the original, where it came from, and I cannot find it. You know, Ra even used to wear hats like this, just like that. He used to wear hats just like this, and he's a musician, and he's a manifester, and it's all about peace with manifestors, peace. I couldn't believe it when I found this. But there's a reason I found it. Another synchronicity, just another synchronicity, right? Ra was a single definition manifester. Single definition manifester with only individual and integration channels, and also had a completely undefined sacral. So, you know how Ra was always talking about sacral sounds? I heard that he couldn't even have male generator friends because he couldn't handle their sacrals. He couldn't, like people like me, you know, when Ra is delivering something to me, I would just be like, and he just didn't like it. He wanted to have peace and quiet, which is fine. He can have that. He can have his peace and quiet. He just doesn't, even he was unnerved by the impact he would have on people. You know, very impactful, blowing people over like, you know, like they're a palm tree in a hurricane. But for him, his own experience, what he wants is peace and quiet and calm. He has a left fixing fourth color determination. That's a big part of why. That is a really big part of why. When you think of sacral, you think of sounds, yeah. But these sounds, so to speak, that are coming out of the sacral go way far beyond just the way he was describing it, you know. But when you put all this together, all these individual channels and integration channels, single definition manifester with a completely undefined sacral. Do you know how important silence and peace is to this person? Do you have any idea how important silence and peace is to a person like this? And on top of that, having a left fixed fourth color determination. He was experimenting with that in a way by going to Ibiza and being with himself as much as he possibly could. Doing fasts and things like that. He said the longest fast he ever took was about 60 days. 60 days. That's a long, long time. I heard one story where they said that he lived in a tree for almost a whole year or something. Just being crazy, you know, probably waiting for the lightning to strike because there was so much pressure here to mutate and it just wasn't happening. And he kept waiting for it to happen. He kept waiting for something to happen. He didn't know what was happening. That's the way he describes it. These aren't my words. He was caught up in a process. He had no idea what was happening. Caught up in a process that he had no control over. He just had to surrender himself to it, right? So he had to enter into this silent realm, this very silent realm, where a mutation finally did take place, where the inside became the outside became the inside. I mean, he was turned inside out in his experience. That's how he describes it. He was turned inside out. And the amount of pressure he was under to even get to that point was quite something. You know, think about that. The left and the right, the sun and the moon, the known and the unknown. He was trying to know a lot, but he also knew that there was so much unknown. There was so much unknown. You could say he was sort of doing the same thing U.G. Krishnamurti was doing, searching until he finally just collapsed from exhaustion and experienced what he called the mutation. That's fascinating to me. that in the beginning days when U.G. Krishnamurti, right after he had his experience, he described it as a mutation. But then he sort of took that back because everybody wanted him to talk about it. And he was already sick of people's words and the ego's pronouncements about things. That he was like, that's just something I said. But he said it. He said it. He called it a mutation. And that's a way of thinking about this turning inside out. You know, even U.G. Krishnamurti's experience said it almost killed him. That's what it felt like. He said it almost killed him. He said it felt like there were miniature atomic bombs going off throughout his whole body and being. It's kind of like what Ra was feeling like being turned inside out. And, you know, doing all this searching, all this trying to find yourself, all this trying to find meaning, all of this, feeling like you're going crazy. Same thing happened to UG, you know, just kind of wandering around and then just in a way giving up. Then he imploded. So let's really look at this. What is the throat center about? It's about manifestation, right? It's about manifestation. It's not just about speech, and it's not just about speaking, okay? It's about manifestation, and it's about harmonizing. The throat center is the center of intention, manifestation, harmonization, and expression. But expression and manifestation is beyond simply spoken words, even though speaking is definitely an aspect of it. It's ultimately about harmonizing one's actions and intentions with the wider environment. So a key aspect of this is actually the second hexagram, which is all yin. All yin. It begins in Taurus, right? And we have all these throat gates beginning with the second hexagram. This is the only center that's really like this. The only other center that is like this is the spleen, actually, that begins with one G center gate, and then it's all splenic gates after that. Same thing with the second hexagram. All throat gates. All these throat gates. And the interesting thing is that it makes up all the individual channels coming out of the throat, and also the channels going directly to the left and directly to the right, and even the channel stretching to the heart center. So all these gates here, all these very yin gates, they are very yin gates. They stretch out to everything, and they open up with the second hexagram, what's called the magnetic monopole. There's a lot of paradox with this, the magnetic monopole. When people think about that, you know, you can't just tell somebody who's, you know, you can't just tell a physics professor, is there such thing as a monopole? No, there are always two poles, always. Two poles of every magnet. There's two poles of the Earth. There's two poles of every planet we look at in the solar system. There's always two poles. There's two poles in nature, masculine and feminine. You have this and that, right? The this and the that. But is there something that transcends that is an aspect of creation that we need to pay attention to? That is not about really the this and the that. Yeah. And it is connected to this mutative stuff going straight up and down, straight up and down. And we'll look at how that works in a minute. So the second hexagram, right? The second hexagram is a really important thing. What is that about? All of these gates form a quarter. There's 4 quarters. This quarter is called the quarter of civilization, and these are all the throat gates when you look at the whole quarter. The next quarter after that is the quarter of duality, with the water and wind, lower trigrams. The quarter after that is the quarter of mutation, with heaven and lake. And the quarter after that is the quarter of initiation, with fire and thunder. But interestingly, down here, beginning with the second hexagram, we have this quarter of civilization, which has all of the throat gates in it. Now, the throat has more gates than any other center. There are quite a few of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 throat gates. But we're not going to be looking at all of them. We're going to be looking at this area between the 2 and the 15, this area, this lower trigram cycle of Earth. What is it about? Union, synchronicity, and orientation. Orientation is the gift of the second hexagram, and union is the Siddhi of the second hexagram. But synchronicity is a big part of it as well. You know, synchronicity is a big part of it. And of course, you could say, well, I thought synchronicity had to do with rightness. I thought that was a right thing. Well, yeah, it is. You could say that leftness and rightness is accounted for in the G center itself with the first and second hexagram. You could think of the first hexagram as being left in a way, right? And you could think of the second hexagram as being right. That's one way of thinking about it. One's creative, and the other is sustaining that creativity in an interesting paradoxical way. But we're going to be looking at other tarot cards and other signs of astrology here in order to look at how this throat center works. Okay, because I know you can go read the definitive book of human design all about the throat center. You can read every gate if you want. I know you're not lazy. I know you've probably already read about it, know somewhat about it. But where we're going is going to go a bit deeper than that. So what I want you to pay attention to is the sign of Gemini right here, which is all throat gates. Now this is the only sign that has only one kind of gate in it. Even when you look over here, you know, when you begin the splenic gates, it starts with the 46 in the G center, which is in Libra, right? So there's already a G center gate in Libra, which means that doesn't fit the bill when it comes to there being only one kind of gate in Libra, because there's a G center gate. Same thing with the other ones. There is no other sign of the zodiac that has only one kind of gate in it. Even with Pisces and the solar plexus, 63 is actually in the head center. All these other gates are in the solar plexus. 63 is in the head center. So no other sign is like this. Okay? Only Gemini is like this. Why is that? Well, people who are familiar with astrology know that Gemini is connected to what? Communication? Speaking? Duality? Well, it's about the twins seeing yourself in another in an interesting way. Right? How does that work? We have to look at the card of Gemini, which is the Lover's card. This is the card that represents Gemini. And we see the lovers on it. We see the union between masculine and feminine. And we see someone or something presiding over this. He's like presiding over this marriage of opposites. And it looks like he's projecting into reality, right? What is this thing that's wrapped around his arms? What is that thing? It's a Mobius strip. Isn't that interesting? It's a Mobius strip. Now, why would that be there? Why would they put a Mobius? What is that supposed to represent? Okay. It's because the inside is the outside. The outside is the inside. It's just we've been so focused on the outside that in a way we're being mutated into a new place by understanding that, yeah, the inside is the outside is the inside. There's an inextricable link between them. And there's something about our projection into reality that is a big part of this. You always see people talking about this. Okay, our higher mind, our soul, whatever you want to call it, as it projects into this reality. There's so much about that. When you understand that you are connected to everything, you are the universe, you are the cosmos, there is no separation. This is the truth, the real truth. You know, we can talk about your human design all day, but at the end of the day, you are the universe. Okay, there is no separation. There is no cutting off of things. The inside is the outside, right? It's so important to be aware of that. 0 equals 2. Out of the no thing came separateness. Out of the no thing came separate existence or separate experience, or the illusion of it. It's an illusion. It doesn't mean we throw it away, and it doesn't mean anything. There's ultimate meaning. Like it says in Letters from 500, there is ultimate meaning in the void. When people think of nothing, the no thing, they're like, oh, is that all existence is? Just nothing? There's nothing? No. It's all and nothing at the same time. And it is what sustains everything. It's the ultimate unknown. It's the engine of creation, of evolution. It's what allows for infinite evolution. Infinite evolution. And I do mean infinite, right? Like the symbol of infinity. Infinite evolution. Doubling back in on itself. Amazingly. What do we hear people say? Certain channelers that are actually, pretty legit, even like what it talks about in Letters from 500. We are your future. This is your future self communicating back to you, because what's inside is outside, what's outside is inside. Right? It's not like we are beings from another planet who are doing this thing to you, or it's not like, so it's not as linear as we think it is. That's not what reality is based on. Reality isn't like that necessarily. It's an aspect of reality, so that we can, like, the sun rises every day, and we have our own likes and dislikes and our own tastes and our own lives. That's all duality. That's all splenic reality. That's all this and that. And that's great. We get to have that, but what's its foundation? Where did it come from? It came from here. Nothing. No thing. It's nothing you can point at. It's nothing you can define. It's not even existing in linear time. It has nothing to do with any of that. It transcends all of that, and it's also intelligent. There's an intelligence within it. And there are beings who are more aligned with that state of being than we are. And they can communicate with us, and we can communicate with them, because we are there too, whether we like it or not, whether we believe it or not. This is our foundation. And when anybody has a profound spiritual experience, this is where they go. It becomes ineffable. It's impossible to define what they experienced. But there's just a state of knowing that they have. Knowing, like the knowing circuit. The knowing circuit. How do people come to states of knowing? People who have channels in the knowing circuit, they're just like, I don't know how I know. I just know. I just had a mutative experience. Of course, they're not saying these words, but it's what is coming through them, right? They don't know how they know. They just know, right? So the Hebrew letter attributed to this card and to Gemini is Zayin, which means sword and armor. You could think of it in terms of piercing into and protecting oneself from. Another meaning of the word is projection, actually. Projection. And this is what we see the being presiding over this marriage. That's what we see him doing, projecting. You could think of it as the oversoul. And we see Cupid at the top of the card. The image of love that we're so familiar with, like with Valentine's Day and everything. Valentine's Day is in what? The second month of the year, February 14th. So yeah, the two, like wanting to bring union between opposites, but it's some kind of oversoul that's projecting itself into reality using a particular formula of creation. Okay. I don't know if anybody's seen this. It is a symbol that actually fits in your hand. It was created by Stan Tenen of the Maru Foundation. Now, this is a kind of a complicated story. I really recommend you look up Stan Tenen on YouTube. Anybody that hasn't done that yet, he discovered this shape through sacred geometry by looking at a double torus. And in finding this shape and actually creating it, he found that it mapped out perfectly to every single Hebrew letter, how they used to be drawn, not like the typescript of how Hebrew is written. I'm talking about how Hebrew was originally written. You can take this shape and bend it into any point of view looking at it, and you can make every Hebrew letter, every single one. And Stan talks about the fact that, yeah, somebody can maybe bend a coat hanger all in a weird, positions and be like, yeah, look, I can make the Greek alphabet with this. But no. This is way more meaningful than that. There's no way that what he found is a coincidence. No way. And he found that he connects it to our hand. It's what makes us different from all other animals. And he created what he called the dance of the Hebrew letters. Like, if you hold your hand in a certain position, it's very much like, say you hold it in front of your mouth. When looking at this shape, it forms the letter Pe, which actually means mouth. When you hold it out, it forms this. When you have your hands out away from you, like how it's shown with this man, the oversoul, whatever you want to call it, projection. Guess what letter it makes? Guess what letter you see when you do it that way? You see the letters ayin, which means what? Projection, literally. How the hell did Crowley know this? I don't know. Maybe he was just crazy. This is no small thing. None of this is. First Light, an introduction to Meru Foundation research. You could also look up the dance of the Hebrew letters. The dance of the Hebrew letters to see this. This is what it looks like when it's on the torus, okay? You have this torus, and he created this shape out of the torus. It's just basically a lot of mathematics and showing how this sacred geometry works. He connects it to the apple. Like, this is the Garden of Eden symbolism. He basically ties all the ancient scripture into sacred geometry and stuff like that, which is what people have been doing for a long time, because taking everything literally all the time has not served us very well. We need to see what was at the source of the inspiration of these texts. What is at the source of the inspiration of these texts? This is what's at the source. All right, knowledge. What did Ra say? The voice told him when he said, "Where did all this come from?" Ra asked the voice that was giving him all this human design information, where is all this coming from? And the voice said, it's coming from the book of letters. What is the book of letters? It's the Hebrew alphabet. Now, just like Stan talks about, there may be other alphabets involved in this as well. It's just that Hebrew is the most well-known one that he found the code for. And it's an amazing code that he found. It just unravels everything with what he discovered. Okay. So in the beginning was the word, not the letter. That's something to think about. In the beginning was the word. That's another biblical statement. But it has a further meaning, really. In the beginning was the word, not the letter, meaning not just the representation of space and time and existence, not just a representation of it, but the word itself. It was complete from the beginning. It didn't derive from something lesser than itself. This is how existence works. It's like what, again, the letters from 500 talks about. Red does not derive from red. It derives from something that precedes it, that it is not it, in a way. It comes from pure white light. That's not red, even though red comes from it. It's the same thing with this. The word itself is not the letter. It's not the representation. It's not the part of it. It's the same thing even with our own reason. Reason is great. Reason is amazing. But reason is not the source of meaning. in our existence, okay? It's not the source. Heidegger talked about that. He got into that very deeply. You could think of the throat as like a tuning fork. Same thing with, Gemini, the Lover's card, all of this. It's like a tuning fork, and it has frequencies coming off of it. And this is why prayer works so well and why it's so important to pray out loud. It separates your intention, right? Your intention from all the noise going on up here. You want to manifest something, you have to put your intention out there. You have to actually separate it from your mind. And that's what's so important about the throat center. It's a relay station. It's what connects to all this stuff going on down here. Leftness, rightness, G center, heart, sacral. The throat center touches every single center except the two pressure centers of the head and the root center, right? This is what's so important about the throat. Its ability to manifest is quite amazing, depending on what kind of manifestation you're doing, what kind of expression you're involved in. Because it's not just about speaking again, it's about intention, what kind of intentions you're setting forth, what kind of expression. You could express yourself in all kinds of ways. You could express yourself through music. You can express yourself just through sheer presence, like with the 20th hexagram, right? You can express yourself with the 20th hexagram of just presence all by itself. Or the 8, or the 45, or the 12, or the 35. And these are very key. Again, because they encapsulate all the individual channels of the throat center and the left and the right. Going to the left, the right, and to the heart, okay? Now, there's something fascinating about the thyroid. The thyroid is getting pretty famous these days, right? Anthony William came out with a book called Thyroid Healing last year. And he has a lot of amazing things to say about the thyroid that he's getting directly from his source, which refers to itself as the source of, it's the spirit of compassion, right? This is what you could think of as the no thing all over again. Why is the no thing connected to compassion all the time? It's because it's not picking favorites. Picking favorites is for duality consciousness. That's where you find your favorite music, your favorite lover, your favorite kind of people, your favorite car, your favorite country. What's your favorite? How do you move through this dualistic, separated existence? It's all about desire and favorites. When you move into the no thing, that does not exist. It's not picking favorites, which means there is infinite compassion there. Infinite compassion. There's also infinite intelligence there. It's not stupid. The universe is not stupid. Far from it. Very far from it. This is a very sacred equation that we're moving in. Okay? So the spirit of compassion tells Anthony, where he gets his information from, it's a voice that he just hears outside of him. It's not like a voice in his head. It's not about intuition. He gets feelings and things like that. No, none of that. What he has is kind of unique. It's an actual voice, just like somebody standing right next to you talking to you. That comes through all the time, no matter what, telling him all kinds of stuff. What's wrong with people, what's wrong with their health, what people need to do to heal themselves. Because there is a storm of chronic illness coming, and it's only going to get worse. His track record shows it. It's not, this isn't just games, okay? It's actually really hard for him to live with it, too. In thyroid healing, there's a lot of powerful information about how the thyroid really works and what its function really is. What is its function? Well, it emits radio wave-like frequencies throughout to the whole body that science and research hasn't discovered yet, that maintains homeostasis throughout the body. The thyroid acts as the body's armor. These are his words. This is what he said in the book. The thyroid acts as the body's armor. It's a peacekeeper organ that actually emits radio-like frequencies to help maintain homeostasis throughout the body. What is homeostasis? Peace. Peace, that's all it is. If you're having a problem somewhere else, the thyroid is like sort of like the database. It's the database that knows, keeps track of everything that's going on in the body. And if you're lacking a certain kind of hormone somewhere, it will actually send messages to other parts of your body that can sort of create a stand-in hormone. He talks about in detail how this actually works in the book. It's a fascinating process. And he's talked about, like say somebody actually had their thyroid removed, they can still have a healthy thyroid, even because of the fact that everybody else has a thyroid. If you stand next to somebody, they can put your body in homeostasis as well. Everybody's thyroid is connecting to everybody else's thyroid. And it's, in a way, communicating with other people's thyroid. If you're standing next to somebody who has a really inflamed thyroid, but you have a healthy thyroid, your thyroid will literally begin emitting waves of healing and homeostasis and peace to this person, helping their thyroid know what to do and how to do it. It's an amazing thing. So another area we can look at is Taurus, right? Because this is where it all starts with the second hexagram, Taurus, the field, okay? The second hexagram, that's what it was called in the ancient, the field. What do you do with the field? Well, you till the soil, right? You till the soil. So in looking at Taurus, what's the card of Taurus? The hierophant. The hierophant. We have the bull. Okay, we have the 4 fixed signs of astrology on the outer rim. Now, we have to keep going into Hebrew. We do. We have to. The Hebrew letter attributed to this card is Vav, which means nail or pin. You see all these nails at the top of the card? Pins. Kind of like the nail or the pin that holds different worlds together. It holds different worlds together. Think about it. All these lower trigrams, beginning with the first hexagram, have a yin foundation or a yang foundation, right? Yang, 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 yang. But when we get to the second hexagram, they all have a yin foundation. Yin, 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 yin. Then we flip over again to the first hexagram. So it's like this cycle going around. Now, when we get to Taurus and the card representing Taurus, the hierophant, and the Hebrew letter attributed to them being Vav, meaning nail or pin. It's why we have Yod, He, Vav, He. You could think of Yod, He, like the name of God, right? Yod, He, divine masculine, divine feminine. But then Vav, in a way, pins or nails the above to below, right? As above, so below. Vav is like a way of tying the above to the below. It's our realm of seeing, you could say. Another meaning of it is to unfold or multiply, unfolding and multiplying. When we cross over from yang into yin. So we have yang all the way from the middle of Scorpio with the first hexagram, yang all the way, and then we have yin going all the way back. There is something powerful about this. All of the geometry in this, all of the mathematics within this, I found some interesting things that I'm going to show you. So we have to look a little bit further into this area. See what happens when we light up the other side with Scorpio and Sagittarius, all these other placements. These are the oppositions of these placements. All these throat gates have oppositions, and they create a lot of channels, actually. What channels do they create? These individual channels. 4323, the 18, the 214, and the 2034. This is really important. This is really, really important. This is about mutation, okay? Up here, we have the quarter of mutation. That begins with the first hexagram, the quarter of mutation. Over down here, we have the quarter of civilization. One is very individual, right? Very individual because it's more yang. The other is very feminine because it's more yin. It's, you know, which you could think of as like, yeah, being more about multiplying, unfolding. But all these gates, they're not like throat gates. They're ajna, sacral, 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 heart, and then ajna. I mean, that's pretty different. That's quite different than all throat gates. But what do these do over here? How do these balance it? How do these balance it? There's something going on with masculine and feminine that is so fascinating, and that all of this actually explains. Okay? You notice how women can like have some things going on with their throat, even when they get upset, they just got to express it. It's just got to keep coming out like no, 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 no. And but what do men get upset about? Like, if you know, it's all about, well, what to do with their energy. How can they fix it with their own power? With, you know what I mean? How can they bear it? How can they change the reality with the energy that's given to them? Now, both men and women can have all of these placements. There is no, right? That's why you can have like men who are more attuned to a feminine frequency or whatever, and women who are attuned to a more masculine frequency. You see it all the time, you know? And you don't have to be transgender to have it. You could say, I have feminine qualities. I know a lot of women who have certain masculine qualities. But what we're talking about here is the template. Just the template. Okay? There's nothing to get triggered about. It's just the template. This central column, or this central core, is so important to be aware of in terms of mutation. And the beginning of the, you know, Scorpio gates, we of course have this card of the death card, which represents Scorpio. And the first hexagram, which is called the creative. The creative. We have the field and the creative. Now this gets really interesting. The Hebrew letter attributed to the sign of Scorpio, and also the death card, is Nun, which means prince or fish. And it also has a further meaning of connection. Connection. Making a connection. So we have the sowing of the field, right? And we have the reaping of the creative. We have nature taking care of things over here, but then we have a creative thing taking place over here where, yeah, the field is going to like grow carrots, so to speak. The carrots are going to grow in the field. What do you do over here? You rip them out of the ground and you make some amazing soup with it. That's creative. One takes care of itself. The other has kind of a thing about it to where you're actively involved in changing and manipulating things. But they go together, right? They all go together. Hadit, in the Book of the Law, the masculine polarity, says, I am life and the giver of life. Yet therefore is the knowledge of me the knowledge of death. Knowledge of death, right? Transformation. It's a fascinating thing. I don't find any of this to be coincidental at all. We have the inside and the outside that are the same side. Inside and outside are the same side. That's why I don't want people to get too confused when I'm talking about the masculine and the feminine and the this and the that. Because ultimately, what it comes down to is the inside is the outside is the inside. Of course, you want to take care of yourself in a splenic sense. And of course, if you set your intention and think positively, you can have a good effect on your immune system. But they go together. It's not just one or the other. And you don't want to just step into oblivion because existence feels too hard. No, there's no peace. That means everything must be the same. and everyone should hold hands and sing Kumbaya forever and ever, amen. Yes and no. Yes and no. You know, I think disagreements and stuff can actually generate a lot of creative potential. The differences, the friction between things. I don't want to just step into some la la land oblivion, which is what it is. La la land oblivion, because of this stuff that we don't like, or that seems too differentiated, or that isn't very agreeable, that kind of thing. So when we go back to look at the Lover's card in Gemini, we have Zayin, which is sword, armor, and also projection. But then we also have the card that represents Sagittarius. The card, the sign opposite of Gemini, Sagittarius. The card representing Sagittarius is the art card, or the temperance card, what used to be called the temperance card. Now, what are they doing? What is this being doing in this card? Mixing a lot of elements together. Water, fire, you know. The lion is usually red and the eagle is usually white, but now they've kind of switched. That's what the symbolism is telling you. They've switched. When you can zoom in closer, there's actually a little skull here with a crow on top of it, and there's a cross on the cauldron. There's something about that. I don't want to go too far into it because I could just keep going in that direction. The Hebrew letter connected to this area, this card is called Samek. Samek, which means support. Some people feel that this is where we get the word stomach. The path of Samek, there's a lot of correlations between Hebrew and English, actually. There's a lot of correlations between all world languages. I mean, there's like the word for sword in South Africa is like the same as the word for sword in South America. I saw a show about it a long time ago. It's a fascinating thing. Like, how do they have the exact same word for sword? It's interesting to think about. And a lot of people have looked into stuff like that, like Michael Tessarian, some other people. There's some interesting information about all that. Hey, Chloe. I'm just going to mute your mic. So some people feel that the Hebrew letter Samek is where we get the word stomach. And when you look at the path of Samek on the tree of life, it is between Tipperet and Yesod, which you could think of as the G center and the sacral. It's right here. It's interesting. It's just something that's fascinating to me. Of course, there are not like direct correlations, like the 14th hexagram is not actually in Sagittarius, but that's neither here nor there as far as I'm concerned. What's interesting is that you have the 26th hexagram, and we've heard people, Roz talked about how the heart center is actually really connected to our digestion. It's not just the heart center. It's more, in a way, connected to digestion and how we utilize our energy. Utilize our energy. Think about this when you think about the masculine side, the creative. Ajna, first gate. Sacral, 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 heart, ajna. The creative. How are you utilizing that creative energy? How are you utilizing the food and the sustenance and the support that you bring into yourself? That's an important thing to be aware of. If people have digestive issues, that doesn't mean you just be like, oh, well, you have a heart center that's out of whack and you probably should, try to get out of this not self mind that you're stuck in. And no, somebody's having digestive issues. You tell them to drink celery juice every morning on an empty stomach. It will go away. It's happened for thousands and thousands and thousands of people. I've done it. I've seen other people do it. It works. It's just something that works. We can get all in woo-woo land and say, well, if you change your beliefs, that'll make your acid reflux go away, and that'll get rid of your Crohn's and your colitis, and it'll get rid of your irritable bowel syndrome, because it's all about your beliefs and what you believe, and that's it. Well, yeah, there's aspects of that. You could go into a shamanic state and change your reality that way. I'm not saying it's impossible, but they go together. You want to be able to maintain while at the same time creating, and use all of it, not just one part of it, and not be all stuck in just one way of looking at everything. Another way of thinking about samek is sustaining, right? Just like the stomach, just like when we bring food into ourselves. When we put food in ourselves, it changes into something. Something happens when we eat food. There's something very fascinating about it. Anthony said, science isn't going to figure out what really happens to food when it hits our stomach for like 3,000 years. It was funny when he says that. They're not going to figure that out for like another 1,000 years, like really, because that's God business. That's what he said. That is God business. When food enters your stomach. Yes, there's breaking down. Yes, the acids do break it down, but there's something more than that. It's not just, we don't live in a universe of just Cartesian mechanical gears, and like our body is just a grid, and everything is just like all these little wheel works, It's not like that. Let me see, how come I can't open my chat? I know people are posting in the chat, but I think I know what I need to do. I need to close this, bring that back. Where can I get these cards? They are fascinating. This is the Thoth deck. I'll write it for you. Thoth deck. Okay, Monica's already telling him. Okay. Chloe says, I was once told that one's true will is in the dantian. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, dantian. If you study like Tai Chi
Okay.
and other things, they all talk about your dantian. You have an upper and lower one, and it's kind of associated with the solar plexus and the sacral, but the way that you're describing the will center sounds, I don't know, just kind of similar.
Yeah. Because it's really kind of close to the solar plexus as well, right?
Right, because human design moves all the centers around versus the old seven-centered being, which is all linear.
Right. Yeah, but there's still connection. Like there's still the solar plexus is still more connected to the heart than like the solar plexus and heart are a thing. The spleen and the G center are a thing. Like we went over that, right? How they have an affinity for each other. So yeah, sustaining. How are we sustaining ourselves with the energy that we're using? And it's interesting how all these form channels. The oppositions here form certain channels. 4323, 18, 214, and the 2034. Now that's fascinating. This area that I talked about when we started, this is the mutative area. It doesn't touch the head, the root, the spleen, or the solar plexus. It's grounding every center in here in the middle, including the 1 and the 2, which radiates from the G center, which is kind of mutating and showing direction. This is kind of like our mutative push into this reality. It's what sustains us as we project into this reality. Think about it. It's what sustains us as we project into this reality. So we have these 4 cards, these 4 areas, these 4 signs, these channels, this mutative push, masculine and feminine, yin and yang, right? all taking us somewhere. Where's it going? Well, you can't even tell because we're stepping into the unknown. We're mixing all kinds of things together. We're projecting into reality. We are waiting for nature to supply us with what we need through pure synchronicity, while at the same time we're being very creative, moving from trance into trance into trance. A lot of kundalini and sexual type energy with Scorpio. And it's all dancing together, all dancing, all of this. We're going to see even more how it dances, this whole area. So how does this area work? How does this area actually work? We can look at this. I got to use the bathroom. I'll be right back. So you guys can talk if you like.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Irina. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Well, dantian in traditional Chinese medicine is kind of a point where the energy source, it's a very powerful point. They believe in traditional Chinese medicine that that's where all the magic happens, all the energy production is the source for the entire body, for the energy production. And they have lower dantian and upper dantian, which is low. Well, actually, they have three. The one is kind of in the root center. The second one is in 3 inches below the belly button. And the third one is in the third eye. So when you do Qigong, in Qigong, they use all these 3 dantian points to clear them because there is a lot of stagnant energy there. And when you go to acupuncturist, they check your dantian points and see how the energy is flowing there. And there are a lot of practices and exercises to clear those points. Because when they get energetically clogged, people get very sick, physically sick. So acupuncturists insert needles around those points. And they're also connected to allergies. A lot of people have allergies. So acupuncturists check your dantian points and put needles around them to treat allergies.
Oh, that's interesting. And dantian points are
coming from Qigong, yeah. There are, I believe it's 3 of them, 2 or 3. I know there's lower dantian and upper dantian is in your third eye.
Mm-hmm.
In Qigong, they have exercises to balance lower and upper dantian. And when you do, when you go to do a Qigong, there is an energy ball. I don't know if you're familiar with Qigong, but they have this energy ball. Mm-hmm. And you move the energy ball from lower dantian to upper dantian. And there's the whole exercise when you move it to the right and left, right and left, and then up and down and to the sides. Oh, nice. And then in the figure 8 sign, figure 8, right and left, there's a lot of movement between the heaven and the earth, between the right and the left. Mm-hmm. And it balances energy in a powerful way. I've done a lot of Qigong in my life, and it's a very important practice.
That sounds wonderful. Wow. That's great. Let's go ahead and move, because this gets pretty deep into the G center, actually, when we start looking at how the geometry and the mathematics of these hexagrams work. Okay, so we have these areas that we were just looking at, and they create this central column of this central mutative pillar, very mutative pillar of channels here between the masculine and feminine, right? And we looked at a lot of the symbolism of that, how that works symbolically and Otherwise, it's quite fascinating. And what's fascinating is that we literally see it in people's lives. This isn't just something made up, like Ra pulled it out of his ass, and this is something that is actually happening with people. It's something we actually see with these gates and channels. You can readily observe it if you are fond of observing people. I'm fond of observing people and measuring people against other people. Somebody has a defined G center and somebody else doesn't. You can see the difference. Same thing with everything else. Ajna, sacral. But this central column is such a powerful thing to be aware of. We have these gates, the first 4 gates of each side. This is where it really is, okay? This is where we get into some of the very interesting mathematics or geometries of this, the patterns of this. The first 4 gates of each side after the first or second hexagram. So like say when we start with the first hexagram, we have the 1, 43, 14, and 34. 1, 43, 14, 34. Over here, we have 2, 23, 8, and 20. What do these first 4 gates create? They create these actual channels. It kind of strips it down. I know at the slide before, when you have all these gates, it's like, let me go back. So yeah, when we look at all these gates, it can seem like kind of a mess, even though we know it makes sense because we looked at it, the meaning of it. But when we look at just the first 4 gates, that is these channels. That is these channels. There's a reason for this. Some kind of continuity of creation with how this works. We're going to get a little bit into that, okay? So look at the 1 and the 2. The 23-43 opposition. Then we have the 8-14 opposition. Then we have the 20-34 opposition. Within these first 4 gates on either side, these 8 gates actually, on either side, right? Well, there's some really fun stuff to look at with all of this. The way the upper trigram works is that it cycles. See how I got rid of the lower trigram? Because we're going to look at the upper trigram for a second. The upper trigram has a funny thing about it, if anybody's noticed it. It goes for the yang side, that always has a yang lower line, right? From here all the way to there. The way the upper trigram cycles, I mean, think about it like this. Let's just look at how the lower trigram cycles first. When you look at how the lower trigram cycles, it's like heaven, lake, fire, thunder, earth, mountain, water, wind. That's how it goes every time. Every time. Lower trigram. That's how the lower trigram shifts. The upper trigram is different. It flips. I'll use the lower trigrams as an example of how the upper trigram works. When you're looking at the upper trigrams from the yang side, they go like this. Heaven, lake, fire, thunder. Then they flip and go wind, water, mountain, earth. Isn't that funny? They flip it. They do a figure 8. They go like this. Okay? That's how the upper trigram cycles. They turn in on themselves. Why did they do that? And then when you get to the feminine side, when you get to the second hexagram, what happens? It flips again, and the upper trigram changes. The upper trigram goes from earth, mountain, water, wind, then it goes over, it flips, and it goes to thunder, fire, lake, heaven. Another figure eight. It does another figure eight, but it does it in the other way, right? It's kind of like, it's just a figure eight. It's like a Mobius strip. It's folding in on itself. It's very experiential. That's how you could think of upper trigram. Upper trigram is experiential, and we know this from looking at the trigrams themselves. The fourth line is the foundation of the experiential way. People who have fourth lines, which is the foundation of the upper trigram, right? It's very experiential. It's very, in a way, you could say, right. It's the beginning of the right. It's the beginning of that transpersonal rightness. And people with fourth lines, they have a lot of things about them. Experiential knowledge is so important. The 3 is the same in some ways, but the 4, it's really the case. The 3 and the 4 have a lot of things in common. Same thing with the 2 and the 1 and the 5 and the 6, okay? But the 3 and the 4 is an interesting one. The 4 is very experiential. Like all these, it's the foundation of the upper trigram, where it's cycling through all these different experiences while having the same lower trigram, the same foundation. So think about that. What happens when we just look at the 1 and the 2, okay? We got the 1 and the 2, and we have these other hexagrams, right? Like, you know, the 2343, the 814, and the 2034. Yes. But I thought, what would happen if we swapped the lower trigram for the upper trigram for these hexagrams? If we did it for the 1 and the 2, they would be the same, because the lower trigram is the upper trigram with these. They mirror each other. But what about these other ones? What if we swapped the lower trigram for the upper trigram with these first 4 gates? The first 4 gates, what if we just flipped them upside down? What do we get? Well, we get these hexagrams. What are these hexagrams? They are the 8 gates of the G center. The 1510, the 713, and the 4625. Radiating direction. Radiating direction. When we take the upper trigram and put it on the lower, and take the lower and put it on the upper. That's what, in a way, these first 4 gates show experientially. It's like you get to move through your own foundational experience, but then it's just a fascinating thing. And I can't claim to know what it ultimately means. It's just a pattern that I noticed. It's just a pattern I noticed. There's something about it. Now, the liver is the foundation of health, just as the G center is the foundation of the hexagrams. It's a fascinating thing. The G center corresponds to the liver. And just like Anthony keeps talking about in all of his shows lately and in his liver rescue book, the liver is the foundation of health, just as the G center is the foundation of the hexagrams. It lays the foundation. It's these lower trigrams that are so important, that add the continuity. But the upper trigram is so experiential. We get to have so many different kinds of experiences through these lower trigrams. Here's something Anthony wrote in Life-Changing Foods. He's talking about dandelions, and dandelions are one of the best things for cleansing the liver. Dandelion flowers, dandelion leaves, dandelion root. You got to be careful, though, to make sure they're not sprayed. If you go out and just grab them and eat them, make sure they're not being sprayed. This is what he wrote about it. So often we get hung up on proving ourselves by being first, and it affects our sense of self-worth. This overachiever mentality starts at an early age. First in line, first to raise your hand, first to hand in an assignment, first one on the bus. You remember that? I used to be like that. I know a lot of other kids were too. Some people feel like they'll miss out forever on recognition and opportunity if they don't prove themselves in this way. After dandelion's spring growth has died down in the heat of the summer, The plants aren't finished for the year. Dandelions frequently reappear in the fall. If you're someone who feels incomplete or less than if you aren't the first on the scene, this is an important lesson to take to heart. Dandelions come back around again. And in this way, they teach us that we can find contentment and solace in not always being first. Because there are new chances around the bend. New chances around the bend. Think about that. There's always a chance to be there, to be first on the scene. That's what these gates do, literally. They are the first on the scene. But they're also very yang, and people feel like in order to get recognized or to have opportunity, they need to be that first one on the scene, right? But there's late bloomers. There's all kinds of opportunity to bring things in later in whatever way you like, experientially, to lay your own foundation. I don't care if you have a totally open G center. It doesn't matter. All of this is within you. This is your birthright, all of this. All of this information, all of this knowledge, all of this direction, all of this. It's your birthright to know this. So when we look at the geometry of the first and second hexagram, Nassim Haramein has shown this when he was looking at the 64 tetrahedron grid. A really interesting thing popped out at him when he looked at the I Ching. There's only one solid three-dimensional shape that you can make with the 6 lines of a hexagram. Say if you actually had 6 sticks. There's only one three-dimensional shape you could have if you had 6 sticks in front of you. There's only one shape you can make, and that is a tetrahedron. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What the yin, what the feminine does, is it fits into it. It's like the other half that fits into it, you know? It's the one coming down, the water. You could think of the yang as the fire up, and this as the water going down. We see this on the hierophant card, actually. If you look at the hierophant card on the Chick and Sandra Cicero Golden Dawn tarot deck, you see this. You know, you see it elsewhere too. You see an upright fire triangle and a downward water triangle. If you want to learn more about it, go to tarotica.net and click on V for Vendetta and read about the symbolism in that movie that I wrote for you to check out. Okay, read about the symbolism in that movie and just take note of this symbolism. The fire and the water. They come together and form what? A star tetrahedron. That's the only shape these can make. This is not a mistake. This is not a coincidence. This is not woo-woo land, me making up stuff. This is profound, really. And if you take all the hexagrams of the I Ching, you can make the 64 tetrahedron grid. The whole 64 tetrahedron grid, which is the basis of the flower of life pattern and all that's so famous now. There's something about all of this that is just uncanny to me. And not only that, it's connected directly to the liver. In Anthony's book, Liver Rescue, you know what he said the cells are shaped like in the liver? Like this. They have 6 sides to them. These little areas of your liver that can like quarantine toxins and know how to hold on to toxins and not let them go in order to save your life. That's literally what the liver does. It saves your life. It kills itself in order to save your life. This is what the cells look like. They have 6 sides. They all have 6 sides. There's something about the liver. There's something about the hexagon. There's something about the hexagram. There's something about the G center. All of this is connected. All of this. Even connected to honeys. Honeybees, like honeys. Look at all these honeys. This was fun making this. Honey is one of the best things you can take for your liver. It's one of the best things we can take at all. And there is a very strong connection between bees and our own genetic memory. Anthony wrote about this again in liver and in Life-Changing Foods. When he was writing about honey, he wrote, if you could trace your family lines back to their oldest days, you would find ancestors who subsisted on honey. Raw honey was not a survival food in the sense that it simply got people by until something better came along. Rather, it was and still is incredible medicinal nourishment. Honey is written into our lineage. Who we are, our souls, our DNA, in a sense, derives from honey. This means that if we avoid honey, we are shutting off a part of ourselves that connects all the way back to the beginning of human life. Think about that for a second. There's this guy, Andrew Goff, who talks a lot about honeybee symbolism going way back, way, tens of thousands of years. Paintings on cave walls and like hexagons being, carved into certain temple walls and stuff. There is something about that, our deep connection to bees. And if you could think of like being at the very beginning of human life, the mutative thing that happened that made Homo erectus, Homo sapiens, whatever happened with all of that. I don't think it's always just a slow, steady, ridiculously monotonous process. And then we went to here, and then we went to there. Mutations happen that can be quite abrupt and quite sudden, and there can be other things involved too that aren't necessarily linear in the way that we think about it. Linear just feels safe. It feels safe. It gets rid of uncertainties. That's why people are obsessed with linear progressions. But there's other things going on other than what we think we know. Lots of things. I don't want to get, lost in alien land. But there's a part of our own souls that transcends time quite powerfully. We just looked at that with all the symbolism. We just looked at that. And when looking at honey and bees, it's interesting that Anthony says that it was like at our very roots of our oldest days of even being human, we had ancestors who subsisted entirely on honey. Not because it was a survival food that just got them by, but that it was incredible medicinal nourishment, that it was a powerful thing that they were ingesting. Very, very connected. That's an amazing thing to me. How it's connected to the liver, how it's connected to mutation, how it's connected to the G center, the sixes, the hexagons, hexagrams, all this. It's quite fascinating to me. All of this is quite fascinating to me, which begs the question again, how does evolution work? Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Which came first, the bee or the flower? Well, if you're thinking in terms of leftness and linear time, you're going to drive yourself insane trying to figure out this question. You'll drive yourself insane, because I don't know if creation necessarily works like that. I think it works like how I was talking about. It's a projection. There's something about it that is a projection into this reality. And solidity isn't as solid as we think it is. It's just that we've been really hardened up by the world. Generally, we've been hardened up by it. So that's how we conceptualize everything. Everything is very linear, very secure feeling. Evolution only happens in little tiny baby steps going in one direction for billions of years. When in reality, there are mutative spikes that transcend time and transcend our understanding. We don't know what we're talking about when we're talking about evolution. We know a little bit, But there's a lot we don't know. Just like there's a lot we don't know about the human body. There's a lot we don't know about the universe. We're learning a lot, and there's a lot that we're going to get to learn and have a lot of fun in experiencing. The timeless nature of things and how mutation happens, you know. Anyway, that's the last slide. You just described the Mobius, yeah. This is really blowing my mind today. And their mother's milk. Yeah. Yes. And this is just a segment of a video I've been working on for a couple years. There's a lot more in the beginning that I get to that's really fun. But this is the part that was really important to get into today, with the nature of mutation and individual circuitry and those individual channels and the throat and all this 0 equals 2, the no thing, and all of that it's just so fascinating to me, all of it. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything?
I have a comment. But I said that my mind is blown today, and then I put their mother's milk after. That was supposed to be 2 separate comments, but ended up super funny anyways.
Oh,
but
that's
yeah,
funny.
just the way that you went through this today really showed it to me. I can't obviously describe it, but it was sort of like a mental vision, if you will, and I just saw a lot. And I've been studying Alistair and astrology and whatnot for many years of my life, and I just have to say that that was a really pinnacle point for me, this class. Like, for real, just what you're going through is helping me see so much more. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. It's worth it. Waiting to get to this point to see all the things fit together. And seeing it, you know, and just paying attention, always just paying attention over time. And over time, just being like, yeah, that fits to that. Then this fits to that. And it's funny because it's all flat. It's all like, that's another thing to think about. Like, it's all just 2-dimensional pictures. But if everything is connected, if every dimension is intricately connected to every other dimension, then of course you should be able to find meaning, profound meaning, in 2-dimensional flatness in representation, because it's the same reality as a 3-dimensional reality, or a 4-dimensional or 5-dimensional, however you want to look at it. We are able to use 2 dimensions as a teaching tool to look at all this flat stuff, right? This flat little wheel here, these flat hexagrams, these pictures, all of this stuff, these symbols. What they allow us to do is kind of like step into a more 3, 4, 5th dimensional reality with our own imagination. Once we understand the nature of things, then it can start unfolding in a fantastic way, because we use the 2-dimensional as kind of like a teaching tool, I guess. That's one way of looking at it. You know, it's nice. It's nice to be able to unwrap your Christmas presents. It's nice to be able to unwrap your Christmas presents. I don't want to know right away. I don't want to know. I don't want to go sneak and look in my mom's trunk, because I know she's got something in there, even though I used to do that. You know what I'm saying? Not with this stuff. I don't want to blow it. But the lid, so to speak, is being really pried off now with this knowledge and what its implications are and what it's being connected to. You know, a much bigger story. that doesn't seem so trivial to me. You know, it's not just something that you can throw away or ignore. It's way bigger. And it's a real thing when you tie it all together. Very real thing.
I think that's what's probably the most interesting is I always had an affinity towards this type of information, but for a long time it really was just looking at charts and graphs and things I really had no idea about. But over time and studying, sometimes it just comes when it wants to. It's nothing I can force, but like you said, it is like unwrapping a Christmas present. And the more we expose ourselves to it and learn about it, the more and more it does really make sense. And it is a very, very, very mind-blowing story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's really fun. It's really fun to see that it's not meaningless. I know it's so tempting to feel that way. Believe me, I go there sometimes. But there is profound meaning in all of this. Direction, meaning, mutation, all the siddhis of individual channels, all the siddhis of all the channels. I don't care, you know what I mean? All the gates, there's a gift everywhere. All of these. Bounteousness, omniscience, silence, you know, like rapture, vitality, bliss, ascension. Just becoming familiar with these is really, really important with how they map onto the body graph. And it really helps us see patterns, and especially with giving readings to people, just to be able to pull it out quickly. Talk about the integrity of the 18 without having to look up something, because we know that's what it means. It's about testing the integrity. Of course, the shadow is judgment, but it has high integrity and it's seeking perfection, right? Really. I just love this picture. Hey. Well, I wish I was more of a new agey kind of person than I could say a prayer or something, but I'm not Richard Rudd. Okay, everybody, just breathe and close your eyes.
I can do a prayer if you like. I'm very good at that.
Oh, you are?
You gotta locate someone.
Yeah, yeah.
Someone to do something you don't like.
Yeah, you can go ahead if you'd like.
Oh my God, this was such an amazing class. I am literally, I mean, every time you bring this information, something inside of me, I have this emotional reaction. Then actually my body is shaking. I guess this is when I'm coming closer to the truth. I'm even crying right now.
Oh, wow.
I needed to leave because I couldn't watch. And I know because it's the truth, because I had that before, I know how my body is reacting. And I know I had, this is my Chiron. Chiron is in my chart right now. I'm going through the healing process.
Oh, okay. So Chiron, you're having your Chiron return.
Yeah.
Which gate is it?
I don't know which gate it is now, but I'm going through a lot of health issues right now. I'm actually cannot walk. I had a broken, my back is totally, I'm unable to function. I can only like move myself from, bedroom to the bathroom. But, this information is just so profound. I just have to sit down and go deep into the gates and the numbers. But, one part of me is saying that, well, I have to learn every number, every gate, and memorize all that stuff. And the other part of me is saying, just, there is no need to do that. It's just the fact that you put all this together, you actually spend probably hours sitting down and figuring out all these things.
Mm.
But I know there is no coincidence. This is all the information. We are coming very close to the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is the truth.
Yeah.
And there is no need to like overanalyze it. We have a tendency to overanalyze. Oh, I gotta memorize this. Oh, I gotta, this is what my problem is with this, with human design in general. I think like I have to memorize every little concept, every little gate, and be almost like a machine.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's how I felt. I would tape things up on my walls like 7 years ago.
That's what I used to do. My whole study room would be filled with International School of Human Design. They have really nice slides.
Yeah.
And they shared them with us. So my whole room was filled with slides. So when I was doing readings, I was like a robot. And I if I couldn't memorize something, it was right on my wall. So it was like perfect. The readings were beautifully. But, something about it was so, like that it was no harmony and freedom in it. And it was no like fluidity in it. So, and I find these cards are fascinating. These tarot cards. Yeah. It's just amazing how this all connects together. It's like, all the puzzle pieces are all linked together, and someone figured it out before us, and we're just here trying to figure it out and having the aha moments and have these awakening moments.
Yeah.
It's like
really
we're
fun.
little children, I feel.
Yeah, it is. It's really fun unwrapping the Christmas presents.
Exactly.
That's what I'm doing when I'm working on this stuff. When I'm working on this stuff, sometimes it feels like Christmas morning every day.
Yeah, someone already did it before us, and we're just unwrapping this stuff. Yeah. Well, thank you. It was beautifully presented, beautifully designed. I'm extremely grateful. You are such a gift to us. You're a gift to the world, because all of us are going to make a big difference in the world because of this awakening, this information, and this knowledge. So I'm deeply grateful.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm grateful for you guys that I have an actual audience, an engaged audience, and everything. It's an amazing process, and the synchronicities abound. Even when it feels like they're not, they are. And we're still in the onion, the layers of the onion process. I mean, this is a layer, but we got other layers, and in a way, like some of the layers might seem complex, but in connecting things together in the way that I'm taking the complexity and making it as simple as I can, so that it's not overwhelming. Because when we see the bridges connecting things, then it is like a pressure release. It's not a pressure creator. It's a pressure releasing, because we can see now. We can see now. It's not, because I remember in the beginning, human design felt like a prison to me, because it's so accurate and it was so fascinating. But then I'm like, there's so much. I wish I could just put this down for a day without mechanically going through everything like you have. I mean, I had things hung up on my walls, and doing everybody's gene keys and everybody's everything every day, and going through my own experiences with it, and then getting to a certain point where, okay, the bigger story being told. That's why it's more wholesome to me. It's not fear-based where this is going. No fear. None. Zero. Just doesn't exist. that's what upsets me with how Ra's teaching it and certain other people are pushing it, and the elitism of it. Like, that's not freedom. That's not grace to me. And it triggers me like nothing else in the universe. And it's like, because I'm really into this stuff. I'm really about the preservation of knowledge in a sacred way. But when I see it just being defiled and vandalized, I've cut myself off from a lot of things in order to try and avoid triggers, but they follow me. Like, I remember I didn't even look at any form of media on the internet or elsewhere for an entire year. I mean, I kind of couldn't avoid it if I went to the bank and there was something on TV, but I wouldn't even look at the TV. You know, if somebody's like, did you hear about blah, blah, blah? I'm like, don't know, don't care. Don't know, don't care. What, you think it doesn't affect you? Don't know, don't care. You can have it affect you all you want. I'm done bringing the waves of obsessive tragedy into my mind all the time. I overdosed on all of that stuff, and the conspiracy stuff and the political stuff, and everybody just at each other's throats over everything. Like, I had to get away from all of that, and I still don't go look at it. Not really. I don't care what's going on. Now, you could look at me and be like, well, that means you're avoiding reality. No, it doesn't mean I'm avoiding reality. It just means I'm looking out for myself as much as I can to stay on task. But sometimes, you know, things just come. They just come. And I've had help. I've had spiritual help. You know, it doesn't matter. I could stay away from media for a whole year and cut off toxic friends and be eating super healthy food and taking all the right supplements and meditating and doing Qigong and all this other stuff and trying to find some kind of pinnacle of perfect health. But it doesn't change the fact that I'm still being accosted by things, inner things. And like I talked about, like, maybe that's sort of how it is because my Mars is in the 39th hexagram. My design Mars is my talent, but they also, Richard calls it the core wound, right? The touchiest part is your design Mars. The core wound. Where is my core wound? Oh, it's only in the 39th hexagram, only in the source of all our triggers. That's all.
Oh my gosh.
And
To go, but I just wanted to say goodbye, Matt, and to the rest of the class. And your class was fantastic, and I can't wait to listen to it again because it's so full of information. So have a great day.
Yeah, I'd love to go over this video again. It has lots of stuff scenes that would apply to me. Yeah.
Okay, gotta go too. Bye, everyone. Love you all and blessings. Thank you, Matt.
you're welcome.
Goodbye.